stand on guard for thee.
I'll move les portes, let the doors be open. Alors,
order.
By members, déclaration de député, l'honorable député.
The honorable member for Mirabel. Thank you very much. For weeks now, workers from all the regions of Quebec have no EI because they've come to the end of their benefits. They're in the black hole where thousands of families have no employment income because they work in a seasonal sector. Quebec has at least 200,000 workers in seasonal industry, fisheries, tourism, construction, and forestry, among others. Regional economies have a large number of seasonal workers. No one is moving to deal with this. This is an attack on our economy and our regions. Why does the government refuse to end the EI black hole and help seasonal workers throughout Quebec and the entire country? The problem needs to be solved once and for all, and it needs to be resolved quickly. The Honourable Member for Dorval, Lachine-LaSalle.
On the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, I am honoured to see the Canadian War Museum open a new exhibit on Canada's tragic past. The St. Louis Ship of Fate tells the story of Canada turning away nearly 1,000 Jewish refugees fleeing the Nazi regime. Our country's immigration policies at that time targeted these people, families, and children who were fleeing unimaginable horrors. En cette journée internationale,
on this International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, we must, as parliamentarians, leaders, and Canadians, be vigilant and continue to do more. We need to build more inclusive communities with real solutions to real problems, jobs, access to justice, and human rights. I am proud to be part of a government that is taking action and consulting Canadians on a national approach to fight racism. Together we will build a future that is more positive and inclusive for our communities.
Member for Kitchener-Conestoga.
Mr. Speaker, it's officially spring in Canada, and that means it's time for the annual Maple Syrup Festival, the world's largest one-day maple syrup festival, held this year on April 7th. Members of this House have already received an invitation from me, but let me repeat it here and now. Please join me in enjoying some of the thousands of pancakes served with the world's best maple syrup. Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to serve you personally. The festival is filled with great food, golden maple syrup, sugar bush tours, pancake flipping contests, and many other activities for all ages. Last year, over $55,000 was raised in support of 32 local charitable organizations. Springtime, maple syrup, flowers pushing through the snow, all signs of new life. And as we celebrate spring and approach Easter, let's remember the life, death, and resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, his perfect example of sacrificial love and his offer of new life. To my constituents in Kitchener-Conestoga and to all of my colleagues in the House, I wish you a happy and hope-filled Easter. Thank
you. The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Mr. Speaker, on March 8th, the Mayor of Boisbriand and I organized a meeting of women elected in 3 RCMs in the Lower Laurentians to celebrate International Women's Day. We invited women elected from the RCMs of Mirabel de Montagne and Thérèse de Blainville. There were over 25 elected officials from 9 cities: Bois-des-Filions, Blainville, Mirabel, HoC, Sainte-Thérèse, Boisbriand de Montagne, Saint-Eustache, Rosemere, from all levels, from school boards to municipal, provincial, and federal governments. We seized the opportunity to discuss the distinct challenges of women in politics. I was very pleased to see the 4 cities which I represent here in Parliament were represented. We had such a success that elected officials from Saint-Eustache took up the torch for next year in order to hold the next event in 2019 in Saint-Eustache this time. In 2020, it looks like it will be in Deux Montagnes. I am very happy to represent the Lower Laurentians region here in Ottawa, which is so dynamic and so well represented by talented women.
Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
March 21st is the day for the elimination of racial discrimination. The fight against racism and discrimination is re-emerging as one of the defining struggles of our generation. From systemic racism experienced by the First Peoples to hate incidents like the horrific attack on Islamic Cultural Center of Quebec City to the series of bomb threats at the Jewish Community Center of Greater Vancouver, we have all felt the rising tide. Last March, as a Canadian of Chinese heritage, I was told by racists to go back to my country. From 2014 to 2016, hate crimes in Canada have been on the rise, increasing from 1,295 reported hated crimes to 1,409. We must work hard to send a strong and clear message that we stand firm and united against racism. We must find the courage to speak up and speak out against hate, even if it is coming from the U.S. President. Together, let's make racism wrong again.
Honourable Member for Surrey Centre.
You ready?
Mr. Speaker, while we were back in our ridings last week, I was able to catch up with the BC Provincial Basketball Finals. Not only did Surrey Centre's small but mighty Coastal School Lions make the single-A roster, but my former high school Burnaby South Rebels won the Quad 4 championship. But what was most exciting for me was to watch my nephew, Nick Sarai's South Kamloops Titans, win the AAA championship, where Nick was named the tournament MVP with 28 points, 9 rebounds, and 12 out of 12 on free throws in the final game. Congratulations to coaches Tim Unega, Bryce McMillan, Team All-Star, Reed Jansen, Player of the Game Ripley Martin, and the entire Titan team for an outstanding performance. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Edmonton Manning.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to mark the World TB Day, which will occur this Saturday, March 24th. I, along with fellow members of this House, are standing in solidarity today with the communities and individuals affected by this devastating but curable disease, as we wear the End TB pin. In 2016 alone, tuberculosis claimed 1.7 million lives, more lives than to AIDS, malaria, and Ebola combined. We must do better. Around the world, funding for treatment and care is declining in many countries, and funding for research and development is stagnating. This year's theme focuses on building a political commitment to end TB. I encourage all members of this House to wear their End TB pins and to join with Canadians on March 24th to shed the light on this disease and to end TB around the world once and forever. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Markham Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, it is great to be back in Parliament after a couple of weeks connecting with constituents and businesses at home in Markham Thornhill. It was a joy to visit the Copper Glen Elementary School to talk about being an MP to those energetic and smart 4th and 5th graders, touring businesses and seeing firsthand some of the great employers like Autoliv and Estee Lauder, who are world leaders and who have some of the most advanced manufacturing facilities providing great jobs in Markham Thornhill. And finally, attending the Vision Youth Leadership Program Awards was truly inspiring. A program that through Canada Summer Jobs provided opportunities for young people to gain leadership skills. I talked about investments in Budget 2018 and how our government is committed to working hard for the middle class and those working hard to join it.
The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Mr. Speaker, the community of Châteauguay-Lacolle recently lost one of its pioneers of agriculture, Mr. Ari Van Winden. Mr. Van Winden left his native Holland and arrived in St. Patrice de Sherrington in 1954 to find a better life and see to the needs of his loved ones. Thanks to his expertise in drainage and with the help of his brothers, he transformed swampy land no one wanted into one of the loveliest agricultural lands in Quebec, Les Terres Noires. And so began the cultivation of lettuce, carrots, and onions. The Van Winden family set the foundation of a company now called VegPro International, the biggest producer of fresh vegetables in Canada. Mr. Van Winden is the precursor of our region's rural economy, and they are now called Jardin de Napierville, which has become the biggest fruit and vegetable producer in the province. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Markham Unionville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in the House to share that the past weekend, the Apple Creek Seventh-day Adventist Church gave me a petition, which I have sent to the Clerk of Petition at House of Commons. The petition asked the government votes with the opposition and remove the value test from Canada's summer jobs program. Even though the Liberal government has since voted down the opposition motion, I wanted to share that I will continue to stand up for the freedom guaranteed in the Charter and the student affected by this Liberal value test. This value test has no place in a tolerant, multicultural society such as Canada, and organizations should be able to receive funding for summer jobs regardless of their private conviction and regardless whether or not they choose to sign the application attestation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Brampton East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm a proud Canadian. I'm a proud Sikh, but I'm most proud that I live in a country that doesn't make me choose between the devotion to my faith and my devotion to my country. Last week in my riding, I met with university students who are now being asked if they are extremists simply for practicing their Sikh identity proudly. Mr. Speaker, I too have been asked these questions, and my response has always been to deal with it in a positive manner and educate Canadians on how beautiful the Sikh religion and its people are. The principles of my faith have guided me in public service, especially the values of equality for all and performing seva, selfless service. Sikh history in Canada is 128 years old, and Sikhs proudly serve as leaders in all fields. Today, I ask all Canadians, if you have a question about Sikhs, come speak to myself or any other Sikh Canadian. We would be happy to share with you why our unique identity is so important to us and why advocating for human rights is a shared Sikh and Canadian value, protected by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
Mr. Speaker, World Down Syndrome Day happens annually on the 21st day of the third month of every year. This date was selected to signify the uniqueness of the triplication of the 21st chromosome, which causes Down syndrome. Today is a day to raise awareness of the vital role that people with Down syndrome play in enriching our lives and our communities. It gives me great pleasure on such a special day to welcome to Parliament Hill some very amazing people from the Kingston Down Syndrome Association. I would like to give a special welcome to my nephew Aiden, who celebrated his 17th birthday recently, as well as a big shout out to Pip, an awesome little girl who, with the help of her mother, began the Happy Soul Project in Kingston, which attempts to have an open, honest, and sometimes funny take on the challenges and triumphs and sweet moments of raising two little hooligans, one which just happens to have Down syndrome. I am incredibly proud of our Down syndrome community from Kingston, and I ask you to help me welcoming them to here on Parliament Hill today.
Honourable member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, many in this place will know that I've long advocated for breaking down barriers with more trade and investment flowing between interprovincial trade boundaries, and more so as we face increased uncertainty with NAFTA. Recently, the BC NDP government enacted a punitive property tax selectively in some parts of my riding against those Canadians who made the decision to purchase a recreational property in British Columbia. Now, imagine being penalized for investing your after-tax dollars on a recreational property in British Columbia instead of the United States. But that is exactly what the BC NDP are doing. Mr. Speaker, I would submit that this speculation tax is anti-Canadian, and I stand with the community of West Kelowna and all those in the Okanagan who are rejecting this unfair tax which penalizes our area and will do nothing to create more affordable housing. Hear, hear. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Brampton South.
Mr. Speaker, today is World Down Syndrome Day. I was proud to join in a flag raising at the City of Brampton to recognize this day. The theme this year is what I bring to my community. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, Canadians with Down syndrome bring a lot. In Brampton South, we have a vibrant community of residents with Down syndrome who gathers and find togetherness in a business made just for them. Christina Tortina's shop was created by a mother for her daughter to create work opportunities and engage other community members with exceptionalities. I want to thank all who work to support individuals with Down syndrome in Brampton South, including 321 Peel. I also want to acknowledge the superheroes who will star in the Playday fundraiser for the great organization. Each of you brings your own gift to our community, making Canada stronger, more compassionate, and more diverse. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Député de Laurier-Sainte-Marie.
The honourable member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, being a black woman is to resist and survive all the time. Those are the words of Marielle Franco, a human rights defender, elected councilwoman, LGBTQ activist assassinated in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil on March 14th. Marielle Franco was a champion of hope, a voice for the voiceless, a leader in campaigns against poverty, police violence, and corruption. There are too many women like Marielle Franco, like Miriam Rodriguez-Martinez, and Berta Cáceres, who were murdered for upholding human rights. In the face of these killings, we must work harder to protect women who defend human rights. Canada must support women activists who are at the front lines in the struggles for justice, Indigenous rights, and the environment, and for a world without violence. Let us remember Marielle Franco and continue her work, and may she rest in peace.
Carlton.
A century ago, World War I and the Halifax explosion left thousands of Canadians blind. But they were determined to work and thrive. So they locked arms and created the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. It created job placements and even opened manufacturing centers where Canadians with vision impairment work doing industrial sewing, broom making, and other important tasks. They proved that people without sight or with other disabilities could work and contribute. Today, the Canadian National Institute for the Blind translates thousands of books into Braille, large print, and audio. It places young people in rewarding jobs and continues to give hope and empowerment to people right across the country. I join with all parliamentarians in congratulating the CNIB for their important work and for a century of service to Canada.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Don Valley West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the honourable member just said, today marks the 100th anniversary of the CNIB. For 100 years, CNIB has provided innovative programs, vital services for the blind and visually impaired, and advocated on behalf of those with vision loss. Technologies and attitudes have evolved since 1918, but the CNIB has never strayed from its original mission to change what it means to be blind. The
CNIB is highlighting this historic occasion with a year of celebrations. All throughout 2018, events will celebrate the successes, generosity, and innovation of its volunteers, personnel, and its advocates.
The hundreds of employees and volunteers who work at the CNIB headquarters in Don Valley West. They make this iconic Canadian institution what it is today. We look forward to the next 100 years and the lasting impact CNIB will continue to have on the lives of blind and partially sighted Canadians. Thank you. Well done. Well done.
Oral questions, questions orales. The honourable leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we now know that the person at the center of the Facebook data leak scandal is a Liberal Party operative. Not only did Christopher Wylie work for two different Liberal Party leaders in opposition, but according to media reports this morning, he also worked on a project for this Prime Minister in the taxpayer-funded Liberal Caucus Research Office. Can the Prime Minister confirm that he hired Christopher Wylie and explain exactly what role he had in the Liberal government?
Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, we all have a responsibility to protect the personal information of Canadians. The Liberal Research Bureau has actually already addressed this issue with a statement earlier today. All major political parties engage in data-driven activities. In fact, the Conservatives did when engaging in a $100,000 contract with Agility PR Solutions. I would draw members' attention to the statement issued earlier today that, in fact, preliminary work done by Unoa Technologies was offered to the Liberal Caucus Research Bureau, but what...
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't understand why the Prime Minister can't answer these questions. Protecting the personal and privacy information of Canadians should be a top priority for government. Yet this Prime Minister has failed to be honest with Canadians about the Liberal Party's relationship with an individual who has exploited the private information of millions of people around the world. Now, we know that he has had a long history of working with the Liberal Party and worked for this Prime Minister. Can the Prime Minister confirm whether or not he has disclosed this information to the Privacy Commissioner?
Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, again, I would draw the honourable member's attention to the statement issued by the LRB earlier today that said quite clearly that preliminary work was done by Unoa Technologies, but after seeing what was offered, Liberal Caucus Research Bureau decided not to move forward. At no point did Unoa Technologies have access to any data from Liberal Caucus Research Bureau.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, I know I'm not allowed to say Mr. Speaker. I'll start over. Speaker, the alarms that were triggered about the Facebook data scandal actually worked for the Liberal Party and for Donald Trump. In 2016, the Liberals again contacted this former employee for a pilot project whose purpose was to collect private information about individuals for political purposes. These revelations are very troubling. Can the Prime Minister confirm that this person worked for the Liberal Research Bureau? And if that's the case, was it the taxpayers who paid for that? The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
For the honourable member, the Liberal Research Bureau has actually issued a statement in which they provide a statement of work for the company. And again, that preliminary work was done by Unoa Technologies as a pilot, but Liberal Caucus Research Bureau decided not to move forward with it. Now, maybe the Conservatives would like to answer about the statement of work they had with Agility PR Solutions when they paid them $100,000 using public funds.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Athabasca. Well, I'll take that answer as a yes, Speaker. Now, if the Liberals have acknowledged that these data collection methods were that controversial, well, what that means actually is that Liberals were aware of these questionable practices, and yet they still decided to get back in touch with that former Liberal employee that who actually had also worked on a Trump campaign, Mr. Speaker. Can the Prime Minister tell us whether he took steps to send information to the Privacy Commissioner so that he could look into this? The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I actually spoke with the Privacy Commissioner this morning, and I expressed to him our support for the work that he does on an ongoing basis, including the investigation he announced yesterday in the Facebook issue, and we will continue to support the good work done by the Privacy Commissioner, and we would hope all parliamentarians would support the work, and we should let the Privacy Commissioner do his work.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister interrupted a woman during a town hall meeting, telling her to use the word peoplekind instead of mankind, he called it just a dumb joke. But the dumb joke doesn't end there. We know now that Service Canada staff will no longer be able to use the terms Mr. and Mrs. to address clients. So can the Prime Minister tell us why this dumb joke has actually become a directive? Order, please. The Honourable Minister of Social Development. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's be clear. Service Canada will continue to use the titles Mr. and Mrs. So let's just be clear about that. Service Canada will continue to treat respectfully all Canadians regardless of their identity in a diverse and inclusive society. Service Canada will work very hard to meet the needs and expectations of all Canadians. Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-Les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, for 2 years now, the Liberals couldn't have cared less about Canadians' concerns about tax evasion. They say over and over again that they've invested $1 billion to combat this plague. But yesterday we learned that actually only $15 million more had ended up in programs for combating tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance. 15 million out of 1,000 promised million? Where'd the money go? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, combating tax evasion, especially abroad, is a priority for our government. Budget 2018 allows for approximately $200 million in new investments so that we can go even further. For example, we're going to be closing fiscal tax loopholes that are used by multinationals. I would also like to recall that we have adopted international standards for information exchange along with our OECD partners. And as of this year, we will have access to data from other jurisdictions in order to allow us to combat tax evasion, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Minister for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-Les-Basques. Well, why isn't the money then going into that? For more than 2 years, we've been condemning the lack of action of the Liberals on tax evasion and abusive tax avoidance. For more than 2 years, we've been calling on them to tell us why ordinary taxpayers are persecuted when the big fish are allowed to swim away. And for more than 2 years, we're being told that the government has invested $1 billion to combat tax evasion. Last week, the Superior Court of British Columbia ordered the CRA to pay $1.6 million in damages for abusive treatment. Is that where the $1 billion is going? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, the government is determined to ensure that the CRA treats Canadians as important clients and not just taxpayers. The CRA is looking at all tribunal decisions in order to make sure that these programs and services meet the highest standards. And I would recall that this case goes back to 2008 when the Conservative government was in power. We are looking at the most aggressive cases now.
Answers, Mr. Speaker. On tax evasion and abusive tax avoidance, we know this government is all smoke and mirrors. At a time when they're supposed to investigate the Panama Papers, the Bermuda Papers, and the Paradise Papers, incredibly, this government spent $2 million less this year to investigate tax evasion and tax fraud than last year. Liberals support a profoundly unfair tax system by doing virtually nothing. When will the Prime Minister start taking tax evasion and tax fraud seriously?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to fighting tax evasion. We are collaborating with our international partners in order to fight tax evasion abroad by improving exchange of information and by improving our practices. Now, within the framework, for example, of that collaboration, I announced that Canada this fall would be meeting with international sectors and international tax experts. Information exchange is absolutely essential in order to be able to fight tax evasion.
New Westminster, Burnaby.
$1 billion, the Prime Minister said. We'll fight tax evasion, he said. And what did he do? He spent a tiny, pathetic $15 million more to fight massive tax evasion that cost Canadians billions of dollars. To fight massive tax evasion and tax fraud, you can't just pretend to do it. Liberals pretend by unfairly going after people like small business owners and people with disabilities who request their tax credit. but they leave the massive tax evaders untouched. When will this government crack down on massive tax evasion that costs Canadians billions of dollars?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. The OECD has recognized the leadership of Canada in the use of data to assess risks associated with multinationals. Canada is making sure that multinationals pay their fair share. Thanks to our leadership within the international program for large corporations. We have also made it easier to access information on multinationals, and every year we assess any risks with respect to the income earned by multinationals. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, another unforgettable moment on the Liberal list of scandals has raised suspicions today. Now it turns out that another employee who worked for the Liberal Party in 2009 is in the news, which leads us to believe that the Liberal Party might have been in possession with psychological profiles of Canadians since 2009. Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister confirm that this individual was hired at the Liberal Research Bureau that is funded with taxpayer dollars? The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Bureau has provided a statement.
Sorry for interrupting the President of the Treasury Board, but I gather there was an issue with the sound, with the interpretation and so forth. And if it's working now, it's working now. I'll ask the President of the Treasury Board to restart his answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I certainly wouldn't want them to miss this because the LRB earlier today issued a statement that clearly stated that preliminary work was done by Unoya Technologies, but after seeing what was offered, Liberal Caucus Research Bureau decided not to move forward, and that at no point did Unoya Technologies have access to any data from Liberal Caucus Research Bureau.
Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, hardly reassuring, given that the Liberals have now twice toyed with data mining to tilt the democratic process. We are reassured the Privacy Commissioner has launched an investigation into the possible violation of Canadians' privacy through manipulation of their social media behaviour. And the Ethics Committee as well, Mr. Speaker, is moving towards an investigation of the developing Facebook scandal. But, Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister's office, will the Minister explain to Canadians what the Liberal Caucus Research Bureau was planning with Mr. Wiley in 2016?
Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, again, in fact, the LRB has made the statement of work public. It issued a statement, and I would draw the honourable member's attention to that statement, wherein the full statement of work for the project is provided. Again, that it was a pilot project that the company provided to LRB, and LRB did not move forward on that beyond that specific pilot. And, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives actually engaged in data research with a $100,000
The Honourable Official Opposition House Leader.
Well, let's be clear. The Liberal Research Office works hand in glove and is paid by the Prime Minister's office. It is the Prime Minister's Research Office that hired Christopher Wiley, who is very well known in Liberal circles, to provide advice, new techniques for mining data. We don't know. So, Mr. Speaker, would the Prime Minister tell us what did he pay, using taxpayers' dollars, Mr. Christopher Wiley $100,000 to do?
Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, in fact, the company, Unoya Technology, ran a pilot for the Liberal Caucus Research Bureau to, among other things, to design and organize several national samples of Canadians, to explore responses to government policy priorities and other issues of national importance, to assist the LRB in setting up infrastructure, to research performance of Liberal members of Parliament and communications. This is all, Mr. Speaker, in the statement from the LRB, but the Conservatives actually did engage in a contract with Agility PR Solutions and paid them $100,000.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Okay, so Mr. Speaker, the minister has confirmed that Christopher Wiley, who was the individual who is in the middle of this international Facebook scandal and is also very clearly and very widely known to the Liberal Party, provided advice to the government on how to get information from Canadians regarding government policy and then use that information, that personal information, for their own partisan Liberal purposes. Mr. Speaker, this is shameful. Mr. Speaker, we have to know what the Liberals let this individual have access to, and more importantly, what have they done and what are they doing with these techniques of Christopher Wiley?
President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, again, in the statement issued by the Liberal Research Bureau today, preliminary work was done by Unoya Technologies, but after seeing what was offered, Liberal Caucus Research Bureau decided not to move forward. And at no point did Unoya Technologies have access to any data from Liberal Caucus Research Bureau.
Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Mr. Speaker, media around the world have breathlessly reported on the connections between Christopher Wiley and Donald Trump because Christopher Wiley claimed that he played a pivotal role in developing the data mining techniques that helped carry Donald Trump to victory. But he hasn't just worked for Donald Trump. He worked for former Liberal leader Michael Ignatieff. He worked for former Liberal leader Stéphane Dion. And this government hired him just 2 years ago. So will the Prime Minister finally answer how many tax dollars did he pay Christopher Wiley and what did he do for the money?
Right. Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, again, the contract for the pilot with Unoya Technology was actually issued after the 2015 election, in January of 2016, after the election, and the completion of that pilot, where Mr. Wiley made a proposal to the party, the LRB, it was decided not to move forward at that time. LRB did not move forward beyond that very specific pilot.
Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's privacy watchdog has launched an investigation into Facebook regarding the shocking allegations of this data leak, and the Liberals have feigned outrage that such a data breach could have occurred and condemned Donald Trump for using such techniques. But of course, they've hired the guy now 3 separate times in the Liberal Party. So, have the Prime Minister informed the Privacy Commissioner of the 3 times that Christopher Wiley worked for the Liberal Party of Canada, and will they finally come clean? Did he have access to Canadians' data, and what was he doing for the money?
Yes. Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, again, I spoke with the Privacy Commissioner earlier this morning and made it very clear that we will do everything we can as a government to protect the security of personal data of Canadians and the integrity of our electoral system. And again, the LRB has issued a statement this morning that made it very clear that at no point did Unoya Technologies have access to any data from Liberal Caucus Research Bureau.
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, the most recent budget is full of nice words and missed opportunities. It's all very well for the government to call itself feminist. The fact is that the budget lacks concrete measures for women. When will there be incentives for hiring women in infrastructure projects? When will there be an investment of funds to implement pay equity legislation? And when will there be an increase? When will there be an affordable universal daycare? And when will there be a policy implemented to prevent rape on university campuses? How long do women have to wait? The Honourable Minister of Status of Women.
My honourable colleague, the budget clearly invests and builds on previous investments
to improve lives for women and communities across the country, $7.5 billion for child care and early learning, $40 billion in affordable housing, 25% of which will support women and their families. And who will be building this infrastructure, Mr. Speaker? We're providing grants and opportunities for women to enter the trades. We are also, Mr. Speaker, investing $1.65 billion in an entrepreneurship strategy. When we invest in women.
Honourable member from Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
None of this is for the women that really need it now. This budget names women hundreds of times, but fails to deliver for them. The so-called feminist government's budget has little concrete to help women on the ground right now. Why no money to put pay equity in place? Why are there no EI reforms so that women can actually access parental leave? And how can this government think they're for women's equality when they still haven't funded universal, affordable childcare?
The Minister for the Status of Women.
Gender equality is good for Canada, it's good for the economy, it's good for families, and it's good for women and girls. After years of slipping in global rankings, this is the change of direction we need. This is from Maya Roy, the CEO of YWCA Canada, in response to the first federal budget in the history of this country to have an intersectional gendered lens applied. Pay equity is mentioned in this budget, along with over $3 million to address pay transparency. Mr. Speaker, when we invest in women, we grow the economy for everyone.
Here, here. Honourable member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, on February 27th, the Prime Minister told this House that the Atwal invitation was part of an Indian government conspiracy to undermine his trip. The same day, a Liberal MP publicly apologized for the Atwal invite, and weeks later, the Foreign Affairs Minister called the invite an honest mistake, directly contradicting the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, that's a lot of invitations to Mr. Atwal. The opposition have one invite they'd like the Prime Minister to make. Invite the National Security Advisor to the Public Safety Committee so we can get answers.
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the answer with respect to the invitation is already very clear. In fact, the invitation should never have been issued, and when that invitation was discovered, it was immediately rescinded. Mr. Speaker, another point that needs to be noted is that this government has great confidence in the security and diplomatic advisors to the government who always act in an impartial fashion and always in the best interests of Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, with all due respect for the Minister, I'd just like to remind everyone that a senior civil servant and the Prime Minister himself confirmed that Jaspal Atwal's invitation to the event in India was a setup on the part of the Indian government. But the Indian government, Mr. Atwal, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, and the Liberal member for Surrey Centre deny those statements. Could this transparent Prime Minister provide a briefing for elected members, just like the one he did for the media, and allow us to call Daniel Jean before the Public Safety Committee?
Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the invitation, which is obviously the core element in the question that's just been asked, the answer is abundantly clear. The invitation should not have been extended. When it was discovered, it was immediately rescinded because it should not have been issued in the first place. That is the complete and full answer.
The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Last February, the Prime Minister corrected a woman who used the term mankind and said that he preferred the term peoplekind because it was more inclusive. He later called it simply a dumb joke. Yet another one. Now, Service Canada staff dealing with the public can no longer use the titles Mr. and Mrs., and from now on must use gender-neutral language. Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister confirm that this is actually the new rule? The Honourable Minister for Social Development. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. And I would invite her to listen closely to the answer that I gave earlier when I said that we have been very clear in saying that Service Canada was going to continue to use the titles of Mr. and Mrs., and that Service Canada was going to continue its respectful work and respect the circumstances in which family live in 2018. Thank you.
Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister said that his people kind comment was a dumb joke, apparently he was just kidding. According to a report, Service Canada employees have been instructed to no longer refer to people as mother or father. It's now parent number 1 or parent number 2. What's next? Can the minister confirm if this instruction is indeed true?
Honourable Minister of Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad and grateful to be able to answer this question. I'm also glad and grateful to say that in Canada in 2018, we have a diversity of families. We have grandfathers, we have recomposed families looking after children, we have parents of the same gender. These parents, Mr. Speaker, deserve the same respect and the same support that other parents in Canada. I'm glad that we have a government that supports this issue and will continue to work hard for that.
A member for Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, today the President of the Treasury Board has been referring to the Liberal Research Board like it's basically a credible source. And having known the member for 16 years in this chamber, I would ask him to please stop. It's simply not factual and it's not believable. And the reality is a former Liberal employee, Christopher Wiley, is part of this scandal working with former Liberal leaders, Dion, Ignatieff, and this current Prime Minister. The fact that Europe and the US are investigating our Canadian content to this manipulation is embarrassing to all of us. Can the Prime Minister explain why the Liberals would even consider helping design and engineer a system that abuses democracy?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think we would want to credit the individual for the electoral successes of the Liberal Party of Canada in 2008 or 2011. He may not want to be associated with that. The fact is, he completed in 2016 a brief pilot for the Liberal Research Bureau, and the Liberal Research Bureau did not move forward beyond that pilot.
The
Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly.
Not only does this government not care if Facebook doesn't pay their fair share of taxes, they don't seem to care either if they're stealing Canadians' personal information. Right. There's no accountability. So,
Mr. Speaker, the use of personal data from millions of Facebook users by Cambridge Analytica is something that we are very concerned about abroad and here. People are afraid that their information will be used against democratic principles. And there are several aspects of our lives are being affected by breaches in personal information. When will the government do something to deal with these delinquent companies?
Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for his question. We are gathering facts, as are other governments, on the Facebook issue. Currently, we have a responsibility to protect the personal information of Canadians and the integrity of Canada's electoral system. I have spoken with the Privacy Commissioner to support his investigation. We have reached out and are engaging Canada's top security officials, and I have spoken with Facebook and told them that we need answers. We need to know that the personal information of Canadians was not compromised.
Honourable Member for Oakville North Burlington.
Mr. Speaker, I know the safety of Canadians is of utmost importance to this government. Unfortunately, the Harper government's changes to the law meant someone selling a firearm didn't have to make sure the buyer was actually permitted to own one. Thankfully, most businesses still check, but this loophole created by the Conservatives can allow firearms to fall into the wrong
Order. I don't know if members have forgotten that each side gets its opportunity, throughout question period, the various questions, various answers. So we need to hear both the questions and the answers. So I would ask for order. The honourable member for Oakville North Burlington has the floor.
Now the current Conservative leader wants to further undermine public safety by increasing the number of bullets that magazines can hold. Can the Minister of Public Safety please tell the House what this government is doing to make our communities safer?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Order.
We introduced common sense legislation that prioritizes public safety and effective police work while respecting law-abiding firearms owners. That legislation includes practical measures like making background checks more extensive, which I note, Mr. Speaker, has already been applauded by all parties represented in this House. And I note the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police says it's encouraged by the positive direction taken by the government towards sensible firearms legislation, enhancing the tools available to police to ensure public safety.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, 2.5 years ago, the Liberals were elected by telling Canadians this: we will run small deficits and we'll have a lot of infrastructure. 2.5 years later, we've got huge deficits and very little infrastructure. And it's not us who are saying that. It's the Parliamentary Budget Officer in a report that came out last week. He said, and I quote, the budget only references $21 billion out of a total of $91 billion. Mr. Speaker, since it's Wednesday, could the Prime Minister please explain where the billions of dollars have gone?
The Minister of Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, our government understands that the infrastructure is the foundation of building a strong economy, creating jobs for the middle class, as well as providing opportunities for those Canadians who work hard each and every day to be part of the middle class. That is why we are making historic investments in infrastructure to support communities. We are putting forward a $180 billion long-term, sustainable, and predictable funding for our communities, something that communities have been asked for, something that for a decade Harper government denied them.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
Prime Minister promised a deficit of just $10 billion and failed. It was more than double that. Yeah. He said the money would go to infrastructure. He failed there too. We don't know where it's gone. Yeah. He said that the deficit would be gone in 3 years. He's failed on that. Now he says it'll be another 25 years, during which $500 billion will be added to the debt. Given all of these failures, how can we trust anything this Prime Minister says about Canadians' money?
Honourable Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Speaker, let me talk about one of the components of our historic infrastructure investments. We are investing $33 billion to improve public transit system in our communities, to reduce pollution. We are investing in green infrastructure to make our communities more resilient to the impacts of climate change. We are investing in cultural, community, recreational infrastructure to build healthier and inclusive communities. Mr. Speaker, I'm also proud that the first time we're investing $2.4 billion in rural and northern communities to support them in a way they have never been supported.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
Well, that's not what the Parliamentary Budget Officer says. In fact, I'll quote his report. Budget 2018 provides an incomplete account of the changes to the government's $186 billion infrastructure spending plan. Parliamentary Budget Officer requested the new plan, but it does not exist. End quote. So I ask again, how is it even possible to spend $180 billion with no plan?
Honourable Minister of Infrastructure.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we do have a plan. And that plan is to invest in communities to build the infrastructure they need to help grow our economy and create jobs. We are unlocking $40 billion of investment into affordable housing, something that Harper government cared less at all. This is the investment we are making so people have an affordable place to live. Women fleeing domestic violence have a decent place to go to seek protection. So those are investments we're making to build healthier communities.
Member for Carleton.
Speaker, it's becoming more and more clear to Canadians that this government has no control over its spending, and they can't even tell us where their spending is going. First of all, they said the deficit would be $10 billion. It's been more than double that. This year, the deficit will be 3 times what the Liberals promised. And you know, if the Prime Minister had been telling the truth in the last election, the budget would be balanced next year.
That's right.
We now know that won't happen. So when will the budget be balanced?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, it's important to point out that 2 years ago during the election, Canadians had questions after decades. Were we in a recession or not? Now, after 10 years, we saw the worst rate of growth for exports. Canadians made a choice recommended by economists across the world. When the economy is slow, it's a time to invest in our communities, to invest in infrastructure, to invest in science like we're doing in order to grow the economy. That is what we're doing, and the results speak for themselves. 600,000 jobs, the strongest growth in the G7. Mr. Speaker, they should take some notes on our approach.
The Honourable Member for North Island Powell River.
There's nothing worse than not getting paid what you're owed. Actually, wait. There's nothing worse than being a small business that's not getting paid $29,000 by a Crown corporation. That's right. Canada Post currently owes $29,000 in rent to a small Vancouver Island general store in my riding because they haven't paid rent in 53 months. Mr. Speaker, how much is that rent? $210 a month, and now they won't even negotiate with the owner. When will the Liberals start standing up for small businesses and get this Crown Corporation to pay its bill?
Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can assure the member and all members of this House that we are looking into this. I've asked Canada Post to look into this file, and I will get back to them as soon as I get an appropriate answer. Thank you.
Member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
With just 76 southern resident killer whales remaining, people are worried they'll be extinct unless this government takes immediate action. Increased tanker traffic from Kinder Morgan, ocean pollution, and drastically low Chinook numbers pose serious threats to this iconic species and its recovery. Canadians are demanding the Ministers of Environment and Fisheries issue an emergency order under the Species at Risk Act to protect southern resident killer whales. Will the government do the right thing and immediately issue an emergency order to keep these whales from being wiped from the face of this planet?
Honourable Minister of Fisheries, Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard.
Mr. Speaker, we share our colleagues' concern about the importance of protecting the southern resident killer whale population in British Columbia. This is an iconic species for all Canadians. That's why our government announced an ambitious $1.5 billion oceans protection plan with significant investments in science, in partnerships with Indigenous communities up and down the coast to do what is necessary to ensure that these iconic mammals are in fact protected and the species recovers. And Mr. Speaker, I'm going to be making management decisions around Chinook salmon, for example, that will be part of a solution to ensure the recovery of these whales.
Member for Milton.
This question is for the Minister of Public Safety, and it has to do with the removal of dangerous individuals under security deportation orders. Mr. Speaker, my question is very clear. In 2017, the Immigration Review Board issued 25 deportation orders for security, the highest in the last 5 years. In 2017, Canadian Border Services Agency said they removed only 4 people, the lowest in 5 years. My question is simple, Mr. Speaker. This is a clear case of government failure. What is the minister going to do?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, CBSA enforces removal orders as soon as that is physically possible and prioritizes, of course, the cases that involve security issues. An individual subject to a deportation order who poses a risk to the public can, in fact, be detained if that is necessary. The issues generally involve the country of origin being unwilling to provide travel documents. CBSA is working with domestic and international partners, including the Five Eyes country, to develop the best practices to secure those documents so the removals can happen.
Honourable Member for Milton.
Speaker, since 2015, the Immigration Review Board has issued 70 deportation orders for security, and the CBSA has conducted only 14 removals. What has been said is that this federal government has become increasingly ineffective at carrying out deportations on security grounds. The federal policy is very clear. Security order deportation is the prime focus for this government, and they are failing on this. Will the minister tell us what he plans to do?
Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the issue is obviously one of being able to physically carry out the removal order. That means getting travel documents from other countries to facilitate the removal of the individual from Canada to that other country. We are using every conceivable leverage among federal government departments to obtain those documents. We're also consulting with international partners, including countries in the Five Eyes Alliance, to make sure that we're using every tool domestically and internationally to get the travel documents, to get them up.
Honourable Member for Milton.
Speaker, what the minister is saying, we can't do the job because paperwork? That makes absolutely no sense. Mr. Speaker, our government in 2013 recognized the problem, and we brought in legislation to ensure that we could actually get people out of the country when they threaten the security of Canadians. This is happening now. It's absolutely unacceptable, but I'm very glad to see, Mr. Speaker, that the minister got off his high horse today and is actually answering the question instead of ignoring the problem like he did yesterday.
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the point is the travel documents have to be obtained. The honourable member can't sort of skip over that step and pretend it doesn't exist. We're working very diligently to get the travel documents and work down the backlog. And it is true, as I said yesterday, Mr. Speaker, that backlog peaked under the previous government, and we are working very hard to catch up.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellant. Mr. Speaker, our passenger rail transportation network is an important part of the national transportation system. The train is not only an ideal way to travel, to admire our country's majestic scenery, it also has connected Canadians across the country for decades. Could the Minister of Transport update Canadians and this House on his plans and action to improve this important transportation service along the Quebec-Windsor corridor? The Honourable Minister, I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for his hard work on the Transport Committee. Our government recognizes the importance of the transportation system, the rail system in Canada, and that is why in Budget 2018 we announced the replacement of the locomotives and the fleet on the for-via rail on the Quebec-Windsor corridor. By 2022, we will have more comfortable, safer, more ecological rail cars and transportation system for passengers.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is still failing on the Trans Mountain approval, risking thousands of jobs, billions of dollars in revenue and investment, and Canada's global reputation. Canadians have the right to peaceful assembly, but the BC Supreme Court said protesters must not obstruct the expansion. On Monday, illegal protesters harmed 3 RCMP officers, kicking one, causing a head injury. The other 2 suffered hand and knee injuries. The Prime Minister's job is not just costumes, selfies, and ceremony. He must lead. Will he clearly condemn violence by illegal protesters? Will he clearly, unequivocally support the rule of law?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, public safety officers of all kinds, including particularly police officers, defend Canadians on the front lines in communities from coast to coast to coast. And they deserve our unequivocal support and admiration for the work that they do to keep Canadians safe. And of course, all members of this House support the RCMP in the important work that they do for public safety.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I tabled a petition signed by several thousand Canadians who are urging the Minister of Transport to listen to them, finally, and to seek the required authority to install level crossings on railway tracks, especially the ones separating the Mount Royal Plateau and Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. We need this to make it easier for people to get around and to keep them safe while they're doing it. Will the Minister of Transport finally take action and place the interests of residents ahead of the railway companies? The Honourable Minister, I'd like to thank my colleague for her question, and I would remind her that there is a mechanism whereby the Canada Transportation Bureau can be contacted regarding the creation or building of level crossings. If she needs any information on the process, I would be happy to provide her with that information.
Member for Scarborough Rouge Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Recently, the Prime Minister officially recognized the International Decade for People of African Descent and reiterated that we have much work to do. I'm pleased to see that Budget 2018 is making investments for anti-racism initiatives. Le ministre pourrait-elle...
Could the Minister please provide us an update on initiatives to build a more inclusive future for all Canadians? The Honourable Minister.
I'd like to thank my colleague member for Scarborough Rouge Park for his important question and his hard work. Today, our government reaffirms its commitment in the fight against racism. Through Budget 2018, we are investing $23 million that will include support for a multiculturalism program.
We are also investing $19 million to take concrete action to deal with the problems that our Black Canadians are facing. We have made a great deal of progress, but a great deal of work remains.
Caribou, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, how the minister chose his colleague's brother to award the Arctic Surf Clam bid is beyond me. According to the DFO website, Arctic Surf Clam applicants had to meet certain criteria. They had to describe the vessel used, except they didn't have one, and they still don't. They had to provide ownership profile, including all the partners, except there were none. They weren't even incorporated until a week after the announcement was made. Mr. Speaker, if they didn't have a boat, didn't have multiple First Nation partners, how did they win the bid?
Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, I'm interested to hear my colleague's observations with respect to a specific bid. The only challenge, Mr. Speaker, is he hasn't actually seen the bid that he's commenting on. So he's taking a series of media reports, which were inaccurate, and asking a question about a bid he hasn't read. Mr. Speaker, our process was transparent. It was inclusive. Our process was designed to add Indigenous partners into an important offshore fishery, and we chose the proposal that offered the best economic benefits to Indigenous people, and we're proud of that decision.
Order. 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 The honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot will come to order. The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As millions of tons of grain sit on prairie farms and at grain elevators on our coast in British Columbia, we have freighters and container ships waiting to pick up that grain in the Port of Vancouver, backed up and using the waters of the Salish Sea as a free parking lot. In between, we have CN Rail that has empty rail cars but laid off 1,000 workers last year as if it's a surprise to them, again, that we have grain to be shipped. Can the Honourable Minister of Transport assure us that he can get CN to do the job and deliver the grain?
Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, after the Minister of Agriculture and myself wrote to the CN and CP and told them that we were not satisfied with the movement of grain, they came back to us with plans that involve considerably more resources in terms of crews, in terms of equipment, and in terms of prioritization for the movement of grain. We want to get our farmers' grain out to the West Coast. I am monitoring this on a daily basis with the Minister of Agriculture, and we will continue to insist on this accelerated pace of movement of Canadian Western farmers' grain to markets.
I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of Her Excellency Dr. Fang Liu, Secretary General of the International Civil Aviation Organization.
The honourable member from Manicouagan has a point of order. Mr. Speaker, I think you will see that there's unanimous consent for the following motion. That the House take note that on January 18th, the Prime Minister, when visiting Quebec, said that negotiations would be undertaken January 19th for 4 icebreaker contracts from the Davie Shipyard. That on March 12, 2018, the Association des fournisseurs du chantier Davie called on the Prime Minister to commit to finally concluding the contract for 4 icebreakers. That the House note that up until now, no announcement has been made and that hundreds of jobs at the Davie Shipyard are in peril. And that this House asked the Government of Canada to grant to Davie the contract for 4 icebreakers by March 31st, 2018 at the very latest. Does the honourable member have unanimous consent of the House to move the motion? There is no unanimous consent.
Prince George is rising on a point of order.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've stood in this House a number of times, and indeed myself and our honourable colleagues on the fisheries file, and asked the